Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Now, it's always a privilege to read the autobiographies and biographies of leading judges and lawyers. It's something I've really enjoyed doing because it gives you a flavour of the history of English law and the people who've made it up, because it's, by the nature of common law, it's always about people and about their decision making. And what we have today is a book that's come to us from someone who will be known to many, many readers, a man called Peter Millett. Now, the book title he's given us is As in Memory Long, which not the easiest of titles in some ways. I understand exactly why he's given it that title, and you will understand when you read the book why it's there. But as I say, this is actually his autobiography. It's been published by Wildey, Simmons and Hill Publishing, and we'll have a little look at the book first of all with the photographs before we go into the review. Here it is. It's a very slim book, and another little book to treasure. There's the front, then the spine you can see there, and then on the back you've got a nice picture of him as a judge. Now, the dust cover has some very useful information, really containing what's in the book there and some comments. And then there's a little note about the author there. The book itself, as I say, doesn't run to very many pages. It's a very nice book. It's just over 200 pages long. There's the index at the back. And then after the index, there is in fact an appendix concerning one particular case, which is well worth reading, when he was in fact a Lord Justice of Appeal. I'm not going to spoil the book by telling you everything that's in it, because I think you should read it. It's a very readable book. There's the front cover. Now, there's a lovely dedication there, which I shall just let you read. I always like to mention the dedications because having written books myself, I know how much work goes into them. And so it's very important to know. Now, that is the list of contents. There are in fact 23 chapters in total. Then there's a short appendix. Then there's a nice preface, which I will refer to again in the review. Then it starts off from small beginnings, chapter 1, and he talks about when he started life in North London and so forth, and the house was later obliterated in the Blitz. Then he went to Harrow, and then we run all the way through with his life. It's a fascinating book, and as I say, it's one to treasure. And I'm very grateful to Wildey's for producing it. Now, what do we say about the book? Well, we say this. Some great legal anecdotes welcomed at a time of change for the bench and the bar. And that's certainly what has happened during his career as a barrister, as a judge, and as a person of very high standing within the current legal profession, the contemporary legal profession. As I've said right at the beginning, it's always a privilege to read a new autobiography from a well-known legal figure, and As in Memory Long is of particular interest, I think, to contemporary practitioners, I being one of them. Peter Millett is widely known to many within the legal profession as one of the most brilliant and commercially minded members of the judiciary in the last 40 years. And these reminiscences will, in my view, be of interest both to within the profession and also, of course, outside it. Millett's also been involved in many of the leading hard cases of his day, and this new series of memoirs can be rightly described as a frank and revealing account of his life and career, both at the bar and on the bench, and it makes for fascinating reading. Of course, as I said, we're not going to give away any of Millett's autobiographical secrets here in this review, so do read it for yourselves, because, as I said, very easy to read, and it will captivate you, I think. The important thing to bear in mind about any legal memoir today, I suggest, is that until a few years ago, it was actually quite difficult to read anything of substantial interest from members of the senior judiciary, because they rarely disclosed their views, as it was frowned upon until now. And I'm really glad that we have the opportunity to see these people as people, not just as names in a law report, or if you've actually been to court, actually presenting a case and listening to the delivery of a judgment, you get a much better idea of who these people are, and you learn things which you probably hitherto did not know. So it's a great privilege for us, I think, as practitioners and for those studying jurisprudence today, because the great maxim of know your judge, that's the old American realist school in practice, if you like, is always something that one must bear in mind when working out how they make their decisions, or possibly what they had for breakfast, which is one of the usual hackneyed phrases. Millett writes about recollection, and that's really why the title of the book is quite interesting. He says that, as every judge knows, memory is not only fallible, but it can have what he describes as a distressing tendency to embroider the facts, and in the words of the Mikado, subconsciously it can add artistic verisimilitude to an otherwise bald and unconvincing narrative. Absolutely. In other words, it follows the as far as I can remember concept of memory, which can always be a special problem for the autobiographer. Hence the ironic confession from Millett that I'm glad that I'm not on oath, although such memoirs will always be a great read, and in this case for the older practitioner as well as the newly qualified, because he's got his place in legal history. Certainly these memoirs are both frank and revealing in setting out a picture of Peter Millett's life and career for most of us who know little of his activities in substantive detail. The personal insights that he comes up with are historically fascinating for the picture he paints, and it's great to see such a large number of these memories of recent past proceedings which have now been published for the first time. And Millett brings a great deal of personal charm, I feel, to the individual chapters in the book, lovingly constructed by the way in which he covers his long career from the early days in Cambridge to pupillage and to his active practice at the Chancery Bar, then of course to his elevation to the bench. As I say, the book's about 200 pages long, and there are 23 detailed chapters covering the most important points in his life. And in the preface, Millett quotes Lord Wilberforce, who said, "Every autobiography is a work of fiction." Well, it's not really true at all, as the publishers Wiley would probably be very relieved to hear. Let me conclude by saying this. Millett offers all of us a fascinating factual perspective which discloses the workings of a legal profession at the highest level of the bar. And we're most grateful to have such a frank series of disclosures in the modern context. So we are given such a better idea as a result of how judging has actually been carried out at the end of the 20th century and at the beginning of the 21st century. A great step forward for jurisprudence transparency and for legal history. So thank you very much indeed for producing what I found a fascinating read. Do have a look at our reviews on this review and our other comments on the web and in the journals, and thank you to all concerned. Bye-bye.